Once we've identified and prioritized the risk in a project, we need to design our management response. How will we deal with these priority risks? There are a range of management responses, some more relevant than others. The first response is to simply avoid a risk. This means that we choose to do the part of the project in a different way, thus nullifying the risk or making the risk irrelevant. For example, if we have a project task that we intend to complete in-house, but the part of the organization that would complete the task has too much other work, this might address the risk by subcontracting the task to another organization, thus avoiding the problem. The second response is to try to deflect the risk. This has limited effect because, though we try to deflect the risk has a tendency to return. For example, if we attempt to employ a subcontractor to complete part of a project, deflecting the risk onto the subcontractor. In fact, the risk remains ours. Though the subcontractor might manage the risk on our behalf, if they are unsuccessful and are unable to complete their part of the project, the risk returns to us as the owner of the project. We have an incomplete project. The subcontractor may receive penalties through their contract, but this does not remove the damage caused by the risk. Mitigation and contingency are the usual methods for dealing with project risk. Mitigation refers to actions that are designed to reduce the effect of a risk by addressing its impact of time, cost, or performance, and or to address the likelihood of the risk occurring. Mitigation includes such activities as lobbying, where an organization will attempt to influence legislation, or prototyping, where part of a project is built and trialed in order to test a concept. In all cases, mitigation actions will be done in advance of a risk occurring. Therefore, mitigation actions require resources and will have a project cost. All mitigation actions will be included in the work breakdown structure and become an integral part of the project. Contingency actions offer alternatives to the intended plan. Contingency refers to actions that are performed only after a risk has occurred. Therefore, contingency plans are not included in the work breakdown structure and do not need project resources to be allocated and do not add to the project cost. Contingency plans are developed as separate documents to the main project plan, invoked only when the risk has occurred. The cost of contingency plans are covered by a separate contingency budget allocated to the project. Contingency plans are produced during the planning phase, though sometimes when risks are identified during project deployment, contingency plans will require management development effort. Often contingency plans, not done until after the risk occurs, might need additional mitigation actions done before the risk occurs. For example, if an identified risk suggests that a subcontractor might be experiencing difficulties in completing their contract, the contingency might be to switch to another contractor. Mitigation actions would include prior negotiations with the new contractor to fix favorable prices and delivery dates. If we wait until after the original contractor defaults on the contract, our position will be more desperate, potentially resulting in less favorable pricing and deliveries. As contingency plans relate to providing alternative approaches, they are often called Plan B. In dealing with risk, we should allocate a single named person who will manage the risk. This provides focus on the risk through this ownership. The best person to manage a risk is the one who will be most affected by the risk if it occurs. For example, the person accountable for the specific WBS activity that will be impacted by the risk. This gives them good incentive to deal with the risk. The second best person to manage a risk is the person most able to affect the probability of the risk occurring. This is most helpful if a risk is directly attributable to a client or external stakeholder. We cannot ask external people to manage a risk on our behalf, so we would allocate such risk to the team member who acts as liaison, for example, the client manager, who would be able to manage the risk as part of their communication with the client. It is important that high-risk activities do not appear on the critical path of the project. The critical path is the subset of activities that do not have any flexibility available in their scheduling, and any delays will directly affect the completion date of the project. It is clear that a high-risk activity has the potential for delays and, if in the critical path, could delay the end of the project. Therefore, it is important to review the project schedule and to ensure that high-risk activities are managed away from the critical path. Risk can become severe and seriously affect project outcomes and how project success is perceived. It can become more important to reduce potential risk than to limit the project budget. Therefore, we might decide to invest more money into the project in order to address and remove high-risk areas. For example, it might be more expensive to subcontract part of the project, but completing that part in-house could introduce significant workflow risk.